It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend getaway, just my family, the quiet woods, and our old cabin tucked deep in the hills. We hadn't even finished unloading the car when she showed up. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, stormed out of nowhere like she owned the entire mountain. She didn't ask questions, didn't introduce herself. She just pointed at us like we were trespassers and started snapping pictures with her phone. We tried to explain the cabin had been in our family for generations, but she wouldn't hear it. She shouted something about unauthorized occupants and ran back to her golf cart, yelling that she was calling 911. Within minutes, a sheriff's deputy showed up, confused but calm. Then, before we could catch our breath, it got serious. A black SUV rolled up, and out stepped a U.S. Marshal. No warning, no small talk. Just a cold look, a badge, and a folder in his hand. That's when things flipped. Turns out Karen's call triggered more than she bargained for. We didn't know it at the time, but that call would uncover a decades-old land dispute, a fake deed, and a paper trail that went all the way back to her. My family was in the middle of something way bigger than a neighborly dispute, and when the marshal dropped the hammer, well, let's just say justice showed up fast and in full uniform. But what he revealed next changed everything. And it all started with Karen's 911 call. The marshal stepped toward us slowly, flipping through the folder with a steady hand. His face gave nothing away, but his tone was sharp. "This cabin's history doesn't match the records your neighbor submitted," he said, looking over his glasses at Karen, who suddenly wasn't so loud. My dad stepped forward, explaining how his grandfather had built the place by hand after returning from the war. We even had old photos, weathered black and whites, showing the cabin back in the 60s, surrounded by nothing but forest and sky. But Karen interrupted again, waving a document she claimed proved she had authority through the HOA to seize or restrict use of abandoned rural properties. The marshal didn't flinch. "That document," he said flatly, "was flagged in a fraud investigation 6 months ago." Karen blinked like she hadn't heard him. My heart started racing. I looked at my mom. She had that gut feeling moms get when something isn't right. The marshal continued, telling us this wasn't the first time Karen had reported new families around the lake. Several had been harassed, some even threatened with fake citations. Turns out, there were quiet complaints sitting on a federal desk just waiting for the right push. And Karen, she was pushing too far. He asked us to step aside while he made a call. That's when I noticed Karen backing up slowly, her expression finally shifting from smug to scared. Something bigger was coming, and it wasn't just about a cabin anymore. It was about everything she'd tried to hide. While the marshal stepped a few feet away to make his call, the silence around us turned heavy. Karen stood stiff, arms crossed, eyes darting between us and the trees like she was planning her next move. My little sister, barely 12, whispered, "Why does she hate us so much?" I didn't know what to say, because this wasn't about a noise complaint or a zoning issue anymore. This was personal. Back when we first arrived, a few other neighbors had waved kindly from their porches, but none ever visited. Now it made sense. One older couple, the Delgados, had quietly hinted that Karen ran things differently out here, but they never said more. I remembered Mr. Delgado helping us unload firewood and whispering, "Just stay respectful and don't draw too much attention." I'd brushed it off. But now I wondered what they were too afraid to say aloud. Karen started pacing, muttering something about people ruining tradition. Her hands shook. The more she spoke, the more her words unraveled. She wasn't just trying to protect the neighborhood, she was guarding control, and this cabin. It wasn't her first target, according to the marshal's initial notes. There had been other families, mostly folks moving from cities, looking for peace, just like us, who left suddenly. No for sale signs, no moving trucks, just gone. The marshal returned, eyes narrowed. "There's more," he said. But before he could explain, second SUV with blacked-out windows rolled up the dirt path and Karen paled like she'd seen a ghost. The SUV came to a slow stop, crunching gravel beneath its tires. No one got out at first, which made it feel even more unsettling. Karen froze mid-step, her face drained of color. The Marshal stepped slightly in front of us, hand hovering near his belt, not threatening, just ready. My dad's arm instinctively went around my mom's shoulder, while I kept my little sister close. Finally, the back door of the SUV opened, and a man in a dark gray suit stepped out. He wasn't wearing a badge, but something about him made it clear he was law, just not the kind you see every day. He nodded at the Marshal, then locked eyes with Karen. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her whole posture crumbled like a stack of cards in wind. The suited man handed the Marshal a folder. Confirmed. Everything, he said. The Marshal didn't open it immediately, but Karen already looked like she knew what was inside. Still, none of us understood what they were talking about. My mom whispered, "What is going on?" But the man didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Karen and said calmly, "You should have stopped 3 years ago." The air went still. The tension wasn't just between Karen and us anymore. It had grown, reaching out like roots, wrapping around everyone standing there. And just when I thought the worst part might be over, the man added one last sentence. "Your cabin isn't the only one we've been watching." Karen's eyes darted around wildly, as if looking for an exit that wasn't there. The rest of the HOA board, who had quietly gathered nearby once the Marshal showed up, began to back away slowly. Whatever confidence they had was evaporating fast. The man in the gray suit turned toward them, voice calm but firm. "We've been monitoring multiple reports, fraud, harassment, and unlawful surveillance across the neighborhood." My dad narrowed his eyes. "Wait, surveillance?" The man nodded. "We've recovered footage, cameras hidden on private properties, including yours." My mom gasped. I felt my stomach drop. That explained the odd buzzing sounds we sometimes heard around the cabin at night and the drone we once thought was just a kid's toy. This wasn't just some nosy HOA issue anymore. It was starting to feel criminal. Karen suddenly shouted, "You can't prove any of this. I was protecting the community." Her voice cracked as she stepped backward, nearly tripping over a stone path. But the Marshal didn't flinch. "Funny thing," he said slowly, "you reported a family for suspicious activity and led us right to your own backyard operation." Just then, the man in the suit tapped his earpiece and nodded. "Search team just confirmed to more properties with unauthorized monitoring systems, both linked to your HOA budget." Karen's face went pale. The rest of the board started whispering among themselves, backing away like this was no longer their fight. And in that moment, we realized we weren't just dealing with a nosy neighbor. We were standing in the middle of something far bigger. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to defend herself, but it was clear that tide had turned. "The U.S. Marshal raised a hand, signaling his team. 2 agents moved in, calmly cuffing Karen while reading her rights. Her board members didn't even flinch. They just stared at the ground like it was the only safe place left to look. The neighbors, who had gathered silently around the edge of the street, began murmuring. A few even clapped quietly, as if they'd been waiting for this moment longer than we had. The Marshal handed my dad a document. "You and your family are no longer under any investigation. In fact, based on what we've uncovered, you may want to speak with legal counsel. There's a strong case here for damages and wrongful harassment." My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad just nodded, stunned but relieved, just when we thought it was all over. One of the agents approached with a strange look on his face. "Sir," he said to the Marshal, "you'll want to see this." He handed him a sealed envelope pulled from Karen's house. The Marshal opened it, brows furrowing as he read. Looks like this went even higher. Karen was taking orders from someone outside the HOA, someone with a lot of interest in this land. We all looked at each other. The HOA wasn't acting alone. The real question now wasn't just what had been going on, but who was really behind it all. And why they wanted us gone. A week after Karen's arrest, things finally started to calm down. The U.S. Marshal returned once more. This time, not with cuffs or warrants, but with answers. Turns out, Karen had been working with a private developer who was eyeing our land for a high-end resort. The HOA was promised major kickbacks if they could push us out quietly. But their plan unraveled the moment they underestimated our family and the law. Our cabin, which had once been a quiet escape, became a symbol of something bigger. Neighbors who'd kept their distance before began showing up with pie, coffee, or just to say sorry. Some admitted they were too scared to speak up when Karen ran things, and now felt ashamed. My dad didn't hold grudges. He just nodded and said, "It's over now. Let's all move forward." And somehow, that was enough. The HOA was dissolved a month later. A temporary council was formed, this time including longtime residents and even us newcomers. No more secret meetings or fines for lawn chairs being out of line. Just people trying to live in peace. As for Karen, she faced serious charges.